All right, hello CS2 and 300 students. My name is Aiden. My goal with this video is to help you better understand null pointer exceptions. I'll quickly go over what they are and then how to figure out what's causing them, because you will get them no matter what level you're at. They're one of the most common exceptions you'll come across in Java. So an exception in Java is sort of just like an error. There are two types of data in Java. You've probably been taught this. There are primitive types like integers, like int x equals 7, and then there are references. A pointer is just like another name for reference. It's a slightly different thing in other languages, but in Java you can kind of just think of a pointer as being another word for reference. So reference would be something like this, like goats is a reference. It's just a variable that's not a primitive type. So when you hear pointer, just think that there's some sort of null pointer, there's some sort of reference that's set to null that you're trying to access the property of. So we need to figure out what that reference is so that we can make sure it's not set to null when we're getting this error, or that it's checked for, or something like that. Okay, so I have a short little program to demonstrate this. I'm using Java Visualizer. It's it's just an online tool to help you visualize Java. I highly recommend it if you're just learning Java. All right, so I just quickly defined up here what a goat is. It just has a name. That's all that a goat is in this context. Okay, so we're going to create an array of goats, and then we're going to set it to have 5 goats. So what that'll look like is here we have this goats reference pointing to our array. So the first thing that could be null is this goats reference. In this case, it's not. We've set it to be something, but that could be null. Then here we're accessing the third thing in that bucket. That's this goat, and we're setting its name to Bill. And what do we get here? We get a null pointer exception. So now why did this happen? So it could be that goats was null, but we know it's not. In this case, what actually was null was that goats 3 is null. See, there's nothing here. In goats 3, there's no goat there. So when we try to set its name or access its name, or when we try to set its name or to Bill, or if we were trying to access its name, that would give us a null pointer exception because the pointer is null. That's literally what it's called. When you take CS300, you'll probably be asked questions where they'll give you a line of code and they'll say this line of code is known to be causing a null pointer exception. How many things in this line could be causing a null pointer exception? And in this case, the answer would be 1, 2. Goats could be null, or goats 3 could be null. If goats3.name was null, that would be fine because we're just setting it to be something else. It's like how if you had a variable that's initially set to null, you can set it to be something else. But goats and goats 3 can't be. So we're going to jump over to Eclipse and look at some more examples. And I encourage you to stop and pause the video between examples and try to predict whether or not they're going to cause a null pointer exception, and then what part of it caused a null pointer exception, because that's the whole crux of this. We want to get to the point where you see a null pointer exception and you can say, okay, which you can point to the different components of the line that could be causing it, so that you know which things you need to check, and then you can just check each one. That's sort of essential to the debugging process. All right, so here I have in Eclipse a more complicated example. We have customers. Each customer has an age and a name and a list of favorite flavors of ice cream. We have an ice cream shop, which is a name and a list of customers. And so we're going to go ahead and create an ice cream shop. We'll call it shop. And so that's the name of our reference, our pointer. And we're going to give it the name Babcock Ice Cream. This is just from the constructor. That's part of the ice cream shop thing. It says when you create an ice cream shop, we have to give it a name. Okay, so if we try to access shop.name, will that give us a null pointer exception? Stop, think. Will it? Pause the video. All right, it will not. Why won't it give us a null pointer exception? The answer is because we initialized shop right here. It is an object and it has a name. So this will print out the shop name. If we run that, Babcock Ice Cream. Great. So now, how many things here could be causing a null pointer exception? How many things in this line? The answer, we're ignoring this part, obviously. The answer is 1. You might think it's 2. You could say, okay, shop could be null or shop name could be null. But that's actually not true, because if shop name was null, well, then we'd just be printing out null. If shop is null, then we're asking null.shop name. We're asking for the shop name of null. And that's what we're talking about, where you get a null pointer exception when you're trying to access a property of a null pointer. So in this case, shop was the only thing that could be null and cause a null pointer exception, but it's not, so we're good. Now, in this line, where we're asking for the length of the shop name, which in this case is 17 letters, including spaces, shop name, if it was null, this would be causing a null pointer exception because the length, then we'd be asking for the length of a null object. So an example of just printing out what it would look like if we just printed out null is if we just print out the first customer for our shop, or customer 0, it gives us null because we haven't created a customer. That's fine. It doesn't cause a null pointer exception, you'll notice. It just prints out null because we asked it to print out a null object. Here's an interesting question. What about this? Do you think this is going to cause a null pointer exception? We know that shop.customer0 is null. So is setting shop.customers1 equal to this going to cause a null pointer exception? The answer is no, because again, we're not trying to access a property of this. This is just null. So we're just saying this equals null. That's a perfectly valid thing to do. I can prove this to you, see if we run this, or we could just simply replace this with the word null, run it, and nothing happens. No null pointer exception. So we'll go back here. Okay. So, all right. So now let's create a customer. We'll set customer 0. We'll initialize it to be a new customer. Their name's Bob. Bob is 7 years old. And so now if we print out Bob's name, is this going to give us a null pointer exception? Well, let's see. What's your prediction? Yes or no? Well, it didn't. It just gave us Bob. And that makes sense. We defined, shop is defined here. Customers is defined within the shop. Every time you create a shop, it creates some array called customers. And we just created customer 0 right here and named them Bob. And and we're printing out Bob's name. How many things in this line could be causing a null pointer exception? The answer, wait for it, 3. Shop, customers, customer 0. Again, name can't be causing a null pointer exception because we're not asking for property of it, we're just asking for name. If it's null, we'll just print null. Okay, so let's just keep going. What if we set Bob's favorite flavor of ice cream, his first flavor 0, to pink? That's not really flavor of ice cream, but Bob's 7. He doesn't really distinguish. He just says pink and points. Well, what happens? Is this going to cause a null pointer exception? Well, before we go ahead and check, let's figure it out. How many things here could cause a null pointer exception? Well, shop could be null, but it's not. Customers could be null, but it's not. Customer 0 could be null. But we defined it up here as it's Bob. It's not, so that's fine. Favorite flavors. For every customer, favorite flavors is created when we create the customer, so that's fine. Favorite flavor 0 is null, but that's fine because we're just setting it to be something. We're setting it to be pink, so this will not give us a null pointer exception. And of course we can print that out, and it is, it should just print out pink. All right, there it is, pink. If we print out Bob's number 1 favorite flavor after number 0, that's null. It doesn't cause a null pointer exception because again, we're not trying to access the property of this. If we ask for this dot length, we ask for the length of their null flavor, that is going to give us a null pointer exception because null doesn't have a length as a string. If we ask for the length of pink, though, here, that'll print 4. That's fine. Pink has 4 letters. Okay, great. So that'll make sense. If we create another customer, call them Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo's 88, and we ask for Yo-Yo's favorite flavor, again, we'll get null. But if we try to do this without creating Yo-Yo, we're getting a null pointer exception. How many things in this line could be causing a null pointer exception? Stop, pause, think. The answer is actually 1, 2, 3, 4. You might think it's 5, but we're not going to count this last one because again, if this is null, that's fine. We'll just print out null. So here, shop could be null, customers could be null, customers 1 could be null, favorite flavors could be null. In this case, customers 1 is null because we haven't defined Yo-Yo. All right, so that's the end of this tutorial on null pointer exceptions. I hope it was helpful, and I hope this will help you in CS200 when you get these errors, so that and in CS300 it'll help you with these types of questions, and even in CS400 when you're working with pointers a lot. If this is just a habit, it'll make it a lot easier for you to just sort of look at a line of code and see, okay, these are the things that could be causing the null pointer exceptions. This is what I need to look for.